"Would you explain to me?" she shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass and slice through the cheerful afternoon chatter of the elementary school kids on my bus. "Why these children get out of school at 3 o'clock, but you aren't here until 3:30? My name is George, and I'm 62 years old. After 30 years spent wrestling with shipping manifests and inventory systems as a warehouse logistician, a career that was good to me but hard on my back and my soul, I retired into what I thought would be a quiet, simple second act, driving a school bus. For the past 5 years, my world has been this big, yellow, diesel-powered machine. It's a rolling repository of lost lunchboxes, forgotten homework, terrible jokes, and the chaotic, joyful energy of children. I'm the first face many of them see after school, and I take that responsibility seriously. Most of the time, I truly love it. But then there was Grandma. Her name, I would later learn from her granddaughter, was Eleanor. But to me, she would forever be known simply as Grandma. The two children in question, a brother and sister named Leo and Mia, were on my route every single day. They were the last stop of the day, a quiet, pristine cul-de-sac at the edge of a new, expensive subdivision. Mia was in kindergarten, a tiny thing with bright, curious eyes and pigtails that bounced when she walked. She would often hand me a waxy crayon drawing as she got off the bus, usually a rainbow or a lopsided dog, which I would proudly tape to the dashboard. Her older brother Leo was in 3rd grade, a lanky kid with a goofy grin and a new, grown-worthy knock-knock joke for me every single afternoon. They were sweet kids, the kind that reminded you of the inherent goodness in the world and made the tougher parts of the job worthwhile. Their grandmother, however, was a constant, nagging reminder of the opposite. Each afternoon, she would be waiting for them, and her presence was like a small, personal storm cloud, parked at the curb. Her routine was a masterclass in passive aggression. She would pull up in her gleaming, late-model Lexus sedan, the kind of car that probably costs more than my first house, get out, and stand there with her arms folded tightly across her chest, a designer purse clutched in her hand like a weapon. Her posture was one of perpetual, simmering impatience, as if the entire world was conspiring to waste her precious time. I'd pull up, the bus doors hissing open, and I would always make a point to offer a genuine, friendly pleasantry. It became a sort of personal challenge. "Hi, how are you today?" Or, "Looks like the sun finally came out for us." My greetings were always met with a stony, unforgiving silence. She would not make eye contact with me. Her gaze was fixed on the bus steps, waiting for her grandchildren to emerge. The best I could ever hope for was a dismissive, guttural grunt, a sound of pure annoyance. The moment their little feet hit the pavement, she would snatch them by their hands, often cutting short their cheerful, "Goodbye, Mr. George," and whisk them into her climate-controlled car without a single backward glance. "No, thank you. No, have a good day." Nothing. Just an air of profound irritation, as if my very existence, the act of me safely delivering her grandchildren to her curb, was a personal and deeply offensive inconvenience. For months, this was our daily ritual, a one-sided exchange of politeness and silent, grumpy contempt. I never took it personally. In my line of work, you meet all kinds. I just figured she was a busy woman, maybe a little stressed, maybe she had somewhere important to be. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, day after day. That all changed on this particular afternoon. As I turned onto her street, I could see her from a block away. The posture was different today. It had evolved from passive aggression to active hostility. The arms were still folded, but now a foot, shod in an expensive-looking loafer, was tapping an angry, impatient rhythm on the pavement. And she was very deliberately looking at her watch, a gold thing that flashed in the sun, then up at my approaching bus, then back at her watch, a pantomime of righteous indignation for an audience of no one. Her entire body was a tightly coiled spring of fury, just waiting for a target. And I knew, with the weary resignation of long experience, that the target was me. "Oh boy," I muttered to myself, slowing the bus to a gentle stop and engaging the flashing lights and stop sign. Here we go. I had a feeling this wasn't going to be pretty. My intuition, as it turned out, was dead on. The moment the bus doors hissed open, she was on the move. She didn't wait for the children to gather their backpacks and drawings. She stormed right up the 3 steps and onto my bus, planting herself at the front like a drill sergeant addressing a terrified platoon. Her face was a mask of thunderous rage. The kids on the bus, who had been chattering happily about a kickball game just a moment before, fell into a sudden, shocked silence. All 24 pairs of eyes were on this tiny, furious woman who had invaded their space. That's when she let me have it, her voice rising to the shriek that started it all. She stood there, feet planted firmly on the ribbed black floor of my bus, her face a mask of thunderous rage. They were witnessing a grown-up meltdown, a rare and captivating spectacle. Would you explain to me why these kids get out of school at 3 o'clock, but you aren't here until 3:30 or 3:40? What on earth are you doing for 40 minutes? Are you just sitting somewhere, drinking coffee on my dime? I kept my voice calm and even, acutely aware of my audience of small, impressionable children. I made a conscious decision to be the one adult in this situation. Ma'am, I understand your concern, I began, my tone gentle. But there's a simple explanation for that. Our school system has a tiered busing schedule. She cut me off, taking a step closer, rising to her full height, all 5'2" or so of her, trying to physically intimidate a man who was looking down at her from the driver's seat. What? She screeched, her voice echoing in the confined space of the bus. An explanation? I'll give you an explanation. Incompetence. That's the explanation. Gross public sector incompetence. She was on a roll now, a runaway train of pure, unadulterated fury, completely unhinged from the reality of the situation. This will not do, she yelled, her finger jabbing the air just inches from my face. I didn't flinch. My daughter, their mother, has a very important job. She is an accountant at a prestigious firm. She is going to be late to a client meeting because of you. Do you understand the chain reaction you are causing with your tardiness? I just sat there, my hands resting on the large steering wheel, and let her go. I listened patiently, maintaining a placid, neutral expression, which I think only made her angrier. She needed a fight, and I was refusing to give her one. The school system, she continued, her voice now a booming proclamation, needs to allocate more funds to hire more drivers. It's a disgrace. My taxes pay your salary, and this is the service I get? This is a failure of management from the top down. People will be late to work and people will lose their jobs. And blah, 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 blah. She went on like this for what felt like an eternity. She ranted about budgets and unions and the general laziness of public employees. She was a caricature of an entitled taxpayer, a walking, talking internet comment section brought to life. Through it all, I just sat there. I let her empty the tank. I let her perform her angry little monologue for her captive audience of children. When she finally wound down, sputtering and out of breath, her face red and her chest heaving, I waited a beat in the profound ringing silence she had created. The only sound was the quiet hum of the bus's engine. Then, speaking into that silence, I calmly said, "Ma'am, surely you realize that all of that, the school system's budget, the number of drivers they hire, the structure of the tiered busing routes, is completely and totally out of my personal control." I wasn't being sarcastic. I was genuinely asking her to engage the logical part of her brain for just a moment. But my calm, reasonable questions seemed to break her. She had been expecting me to argue, to yell back, to defend myself, to give her more fuel for her fire. My refusal to engage, my simple statement of fact, threw her completely off balance. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing a few times, but no words came out. She had no response. Her entire argument, her entire rage, was predicated on me being the source of her problem. By calmly explaining that I was just a cog in a much larger machine, I had dismantled her entire premise. She could only muster a sputtering, impotent humph before turning on her heel, her face a mask of furious defeat. She marched down the steps, snatched up her wide-eyed grandchildren who had been waiting nervously at the bottom, and whisked them away to her car without another word. For the next week or two, my afternoons were different. Leo and Mia were no longer on my bus. I figured Grandma Eleanor had decided to just go ahead and pick them up from the school herself every day. As the old saying goes, want a job done right, do it yourself. It worked for me. My afternoons were a little less tense. The route was a little quieter, without Leo's terrible jokes and Mia's daily artwork. And I'll admit I missed that part. But I couldn't deny that it was also more peaceful without the silent, judgmental presence that awaited me at my final stop. I put the incident out of my mind and settled into the new, quieter routine. Then, about 2 weeks later, the universe decided to present me with a little gift, a little piece of karmic poetry. It was a rainy, miserable Tuesday, the kind of day that makes you just want to curl up with a hot drink. I had a 90-minute break between my morning high school run and my afternoon elementary run, a gap I usually spent reading a book in the bus depot's break room. But on this day, the chill had gotten into my bones, and all I wanted was a good, hot cup of coffee. I pulled the bus into its spot and hopped in my personal car. There was a McDonald's just a few blocks away. It wasn't fancy, but it was close, and their coffee was consistently hot and surprisingly good. It was, I figured, a simple, uncomplicated pleasure in the middle of a dreary day. I had no idea it was about to become one of the most memorable afternoons of my life. I walked in, shaking the rain from my jacket, and headed for the counter, completely unaware that I was about to come face to face with my own personal tyrant, in a setting I never could have imagined. The McDonald's was a symphony of controlled chaos. The air was thick with the smell of French fries and disinfectant, a scent unique to fast food restaurants the world over. Behind the counter, a handful of teenagers moved with a frantic, stressed-out energy, trying to keep up with the relentless beeping of the fryers and the steady stream of orders on their screens. It was a high-pressure, thankless environment, and the lunch rush hadn't even started yet. I stood in line, ordered my large black coffee, and as I stepped to the side to wait, I glanced over at the manager's station behind the counter, a small island of relative calm in the middle of the storm. And there she was. It was the grandma, Eleanor. She was wearing a standard-issue, ill-fitting McDonald's manager polo shirt. The cheerful Golden Arches logo, a stark, ironic contrast to the miserable expression on her face. A headset was perched slightly askew on her perfectly coiffed hair. She looked stressed, overwhelmed, and deeply, profoundly unhappy. Her face was tense with a mixture of frustration and panic as she barked orders at a teenager who was struggling to keep up with the French fry machine, her voice carrying the same sharp, shrill edge I remembered so vividly from the bus. She turned, her eyes scanning the lobby for the next problem to solve, and then she saw me. Our eyes met across the bustling, chaotic restaurant. A wave of emotions washed over her face in a split second, a cinematic progression of pure shock. First, simple recognition. Then, a dawning, horrified realization of who I was, where she was, and the profound, cosmic irony of the situation. Finally, a deep, profound, and utterly crushing shame. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and sick under the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights. She froze mid-sentence, her mouth slightly agape. I had her. I had her right where I wanted her. The perfect, karmic revenge laid itself out in my mind like a beautiful, golden tapestry. The opportunity was so flawless, so poetically just. It felt like it had been delivered by the hand of God himself, a gift for my months of patient tolerance. I could feel a slow, wicked smile spreading across my face as the entire fantasy played out in my head, a silent movie of righteous retribution. I would motion her over, with an imperious flick of my finger. I would wait until she was standing right in front of me, trapped behind the counter, in her little polyester uniform, a prisoner in her own chaotic kingdom. And then, in a voice just loud enough for everyone around us to hear, the teenagers working the grill, the old folks at their tables, the other waiting customers, I would begin my performance. "Oh, hi there," I would say, my voice dripping with the same false exaggerated concern she had used on me. "So, you're the manager here. That's great. I have a bit of a complaint, if you have a moment. It seems the service here is a little slow." And then I would give her back her own words. A perfect, verbatim recital of the unhinged speech she had given me on the bus. "The service here is too slow," I would begin, my voice rising with theatrical indignation, just as hers had. "I ordered my coffee a full minute ago, and it's still not ready. This will not do. McDonald's, a multi-billion-dollar global corporation, needs to allocate more funds from its billions in profits to hire more employees. It's a disgrace. I have places to be. Important places. And because of your incompetence, people will be late, and people will lose their jobs. And blah, 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 blah." I savored the thought. I could picture the look on her face. The stunned, public humiliation. The utter powerlessness she would feel as I, the humble bus driver she held in such contempt, eviscerated her in front of her own employees and customers using her own idiotic, unreasonable words as the weapon. Oh, it was a beautiful, tempting thought. It was the perfect revenge. But, of course, I said no such thing, because that's not who I am. And I am not that kind of person. My father always told me, "Son, never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it." Standing there, I understood what he meant. To stoop to her level, to engage in the same kind of public bullying she had inflicted on me, wouldn't make me better than her. It would make me just like her. Instead, as we stood there, locked in that silent, knowing, and intensely awkward gaze, I let the wicked smile fade from my face. I replaced it with the same gentle, polite smile I gave her every single day at the bus stop. I gave her a small friendly wave. Her reaction was immediate and profound. The tension visibly drained from her shoulders, as if I had cut a string, holding her puppet-like body rigid. Her look of horror softened into one of bewildered relief, followed by a wave of what I can only describe as deep, humbling shame. She gave me a kind of half-smile back, a pathetic, feeble little wave of her hand. In that moment, she knew. Oh yes, she knew. She knew that I had her dead to rights. She knew that I had the perfect weapon, her own words, loaded and aimed directly at her heart, and that I could have pulled the trigger without a second thought, destroying what was left of her dignity. And she knew that I had consciously, deliberately chosen not to. The silence was louder than any screaming match could ever have been. My mercy was my revenge. A moment later, the teenager at the counter, oblivious to the silent drama that had just unfolded, called my number and handed me my coffee. As I turned to leave, Eleanor and I made eye contact one last time. I held up my coffee in a small, silent toast. "Hey, great seeing you," I said, my voice warm and genuine. "Have a nice day?" She again looked a bit bewildered, as if my simple decency was a foreign language she couldn't quite comprehend. She gave me back that same half-smile and feeble wave, and I walked out the door, the little bell chiming my departure. Her grandchildren started riding my school bus again a short time later. The very next Monday, they were there, waiting at the bus stop in the morning. That afternoon, Eleanor was there to pick them up. But she was a different woman. She wasn't standing there with her arms folded, tapping her foot. Her posture was relaxed. As I opened the bus door, she looked up, made direct eye contact, and smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Hi, George," she said, as the kids got off the bus. "Thank you. Have a good afternoon." I smiled back. "You too, Eleanor," I replied, using her name for the first time. "See you tomorrow." From that day on, our daily interactions were remarkably, blessedly pleasant. She was never rude again. In fact, we'd actually exchange pleasantries. We'd chat for a moment or two about the weather, or about the funny thing Mia had drawn that day, or Leo's newest terrible joke. A relationship of mutual, quiet respect was born from an act of untaken revenge. Sometimes, taking the high road, letting karma do the talking, and just being the nice guy, can be the most awesome revenge of all.